purpose of this video is to show you how to assemble an electroboard. An electroboard is a really great way to test knowledge and skills that you have taught as part of a lesson. It also provides kids a way to test their knowledge while also playing a game. They're very low cost and they're reusable for a lot of different topics, which makes them very versatile and worth the investment. To get started, I'm going to give you an overview of what the electroboard is going to look like when it's finished, and then we'll go into the exact materials that you'll need to create the electroboard. So to begin, we had to decide what the topic of this electroboard is going to be. And in our case, we're going to use it to test my plate knowledge. So we have a small my plate that's been laminated. We have a woe word, which would apply to things that are either high in sugar or snacks or things that are not part of the 5 food groups. And then we have a number of different fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy, as well as snacks and some tricky ones that we're going to put onto the board, and they're all going to be Velcroed. And the beauty of having everything Velcroed is that we can remove it and we can use this board and its circuit for a completely different game. So in the end, what we'll have is the main topic, our woe symbol, all of our different food groups and food items, and then we're going to have a brad that is going to be here, for example, at the pear, and then it's also, there's going to be a brad at fruits, so that when they use a continuity tester, they'll be able to connect these two brads and the circuit will light up telling them they have the right answer. So for example, if they pick broccoli and then they pick grains, the circuit will not light up. And when I talk about the circuit, the way we're going to test that is through a continuity tester. And it looks like this. It has a string, it has 2 metal ends. This end is protected by a little cap, and what they're going to do is connect, for example, I mentioned pears, and then they're going to put the other end at the brad for fruits, and it will light up. So we're going to talk next about all the materials that you'll need to create this board. In order to make your electroboard, you're going to need a few supplies. And as I mentioned, this is very low cost, so you'll be able to use it for lots of activities in the future, not just the one you're creating today. So for our purposes, as I mentioned, we are going to test my plate knowledge. So we've printed all of our pieces that we need on cardstock. We've laminated everything and then cut it out so everything's ready to go. It's important once you get everything cut out that you also lay it down on your board just to make sure that everything fits and looks the way you want it to be. To attach all of your pieces to your poster board, you are going to need some Velcro. You're going to need some scissors to be able to cut both your Velcro and your tape and your wire. You're going to need a packing tape. Standard packing tape will work, and that can be purchased from either Walmart or an office supply store, and I would recommend a heavy packing tape. You're going to need some wire that is uncoated. This came from the floral section of Michael's, but it could be purchased at any craft store. This is 30 gauge, although you could go up to a slightly thicker wire, but you do want to keep it a little bit on the thin side so it's easy for you to use. You're also going to need some metal brads. These can be purchased in a box of 100 and come from any office supply store as well. Then your continuity tester, as I mentioned earlier, has 2 ends that are metal. The 2 metal ends will connect to each brad and light up a circuit that is on the end of the continuity tester. This tester has a AAA battery on the inside, so you may want to purchase some extra batteries just so you have them on hand as you use this continuity tester. To purchase it, you're going to probably want to go to the water heater section of your home improvement store. It's going to come in a package that looks just like this, and it's going to cost anywhere between $6 to $10. You definitely don't want to spend any more than that because it's really not needed. And so they make them as high as $50 to $100, but this little guy will do the trick. And when we're all done creating our board, we're gonna use this packing tape to seal up all of the ends of our board so that the circuit is hidden from the kids so they don't know what the circuit is, but they'll be able to actually test their knowledge, which is why it's really important to have some paper on hand so that you can remember what the circuit is as well. One of the things that you're going to want to consider and make a decision about early on as you start creating education activities is which side of the Velcro goes on the pieces that are attached and which side goes on your board. So for our division, what we decided years ago was that every time we create an education activity, the board always has the soft side of the Velcro and the pieces always have the rough side, so that any board can be used over and over and over with multiple different sets of pieces, and it will always be consistent. So that's an important decision to make before you move forward. And really, I would encourage you to set a policy for your department so that all new activities would be the same. So what we've done is just attached our MyPlate, and then we're going to need to put some brads at the different parts so that we have something to connect to all of our food pieces down below. On this case, I did not put the brads in the actual Velcroed piece because I wanted to be able to remove it and use it for other activities at another time and use different things on this board. But if you knew you were only going to use the board for MyPlate and it would not be used for anything else, you could actually attach this piece and then put your brads on the actual MyPlate. So that's really just a personal decision based on what you want to use the board for. So to get started, you're going to need something sharp to actually poke a hole. Please try not to hurt yourself, but what you're going to do is create a hole that's close by the item, just like I did here with grains. So over in dairy, I'm going to very gently just kind of use a circular motion. My fingers are out of the way on the back side, and I'm going to just keep moving it around until it works its way all the way through, just like that. Then close up my scissors, and then I'm going to stick a brad into this piece of laminated poster board, and then I'm going to flip it around so you can see on the other side. What we're going to do is just open up the brad and lay it as flat as we can. When we get to the point where we're connecting the circuit, we will actually take wire and wrap it around there and close it down. But for now, this will do. So what we want to do is create all of our brads in all the places that we need. I'm going to do rows down here, and then we'll show you what it looks like in just a minute. So now you can see we've put on our MyPlate and our woe. We have brads associated with each of the food groups and also those that should be consumed in moderation here. And then what we've done is gone ahead and added all of the Velcro pieces onto the board so that we are sure the layout is exactly the way we want it, both size-wise and so that a variety is kind of scattered throughout. So what we've done is attach the Velcro. You can see all the soft sides are always on the board and the rough side is on the pieces. If you decide later that you really want to move some things around, it's very easy to do. You just take it off and swap them out. So what we're going to do next is start adding brads at the top of each row all the way across and in between each row so that the brad is on top of the item that is pictured there. So now that we have all of our brads in place here and all of our Velcro pieces on, it's time for us to make a map of our board. Now this board is particularly complicated because we have a lot of options up here for choices as well as a lot of options here for choices. And so what we're going to do is create a mini map, and you can see where I've put my plate here and all the corresponding brads, as well as the woe and its corresponding brad. And then each of these brads in this matrix represents one of the items here on the sheet. Now, because we have so much going on here and so much going on here, we've chosen to use colors that correspond with the brads. If we did not do that, we'd end up with a map that looked a little bit more like this, and you can see with all of the black lines going everywhere, it's very difficult to see what goes where. So we opted to use color in this case, and we're using woe for yellow, and we're using fruit, we're using red, and all the other colors that correspond with my plate. So we're going to just start with this first one, Doritos, which is not on my plate. This is a woe. So we're going to do a line from that block to that brad. The next one is dairy, which we're going to use blue to correspond with my plate. And that one is going to go straight to the dairy brad. So you can see with some of the colors, we're going to be able to easier identify which brads are tied to which answers when we get ready to replicate this for other activities. We have fruit. We're going to take fruit straight up to this brad. Then you've got another woe here with a beverage that's going to go here. So you just continue this process all the way through all of your selections and tie it back to the corresponding answers. In addition to creating your map so that you know which brads correspond to the correct answers, it could be helpful to add some dots to the inside of your board so that you can easily and quickly wire your circuit, and just in case for some reason your map gets lost, you will always know what the circuit is. So as I open up the board and you see the back side, you can actually see where here I've wired one brad to another already. But if we look at the front and we see that dairy is right here on this brad, I'm holding my finger to it on the back side, and then I can just stick a blue sticker here so I know this is dairy. And then likewise, the yogurt, which is this brad here, if I put my finger on the opposite side so I know exactly where it is, as I flip it over, I can add a blue here. So that when I get ready to wire the circuit from brad to brad, I know I'll move this guy out of the way and I'll put some wire from here to here. So we're going to fill the rest of this board in and then we'll get started with wiring. So now you can see we've put dots on all of the items up here on my plate and whoa, and then all the corresponding items for the students to match. So here we have fruit, we have vegetable, grain. We did not have a purple for protein, so we just left that blank. Here's our dairy, and then here's our whoa. So anywhere you see a yellow, that's also a whoa item. So what we're going to do next is show you how to complete the circuit by adding wires from brad to brad. So now we're going to connect these two brads where we have dairy, and then we have the corresponding answer for dairy. You'll notice that there is a brad in the middle, so we're going to want to turn that guy a little bit to the side, then take our wire, and we're going to measure just a little bit more than the distance from brad to brad. So you can see I've gone over about 2 inches up at the top and over about 2 inches on that bottom. That gives us enough space so that we can actually wrap the wire around the brad. So we're going to put these brads up, put this one up, and then I'm going to start with this bottom one, and I'm just circling around and around and around. Probably 3 or 4 times is good, and then flatten it out really flat so that it stays secure. And then up top I'm going to do the same. Just pull it tight and wrap around and around. And then I have a little extra here so I can actually clip that off. And I'm going to open up the brad, push down so it's really tight. So now I have a circuit that's complete from brad to brad. Underneath it, you'll notice I already connected these two. This is the Doritos that went to the whoa. And in order for these circuits to not cross each other, we actually have to add some tape. So the next step is going to be to take a little bit of packing tape, and it comes in a wide strip, so you're going to want to cut it down a little bit, so I make it a little bit skinnier, and then tear off a little piece that I need. I'm going to start at the top of the brad, just cover as much of it as I can and kind of press it down. Just continue that until you get to the other side where your connecting brad is. So now you can see if this brad moves over, it's not going to interfere with either of these circuits because it's protected by the tape. Now, I would recommend before you go much further that you test your circuit and make sure that it works. You would hate to get to the end and then find out that something's not quite right. So let's take our continuity tester. We're going to put one end on dairy to check what we just did, and the other end on our yogurt, and voila, we've got a circuit. So we know we have the right answer, that yogurt is in fact a dairy. So this is something to be aware of as you're laying down circuits. We're attaching this fruit to fruit on my plate up here, but you'll notice we've got this whoa right in the middle, and this line as it is very close. So what I want to do is move it away from that brad and tape it down so that it's not going to interfere with this circuit here and give us the wrong answer. So just scooting it out of the way a little bit and laying down the tape, you should have plenty of space to still connect to this circuit. start building your circuits from brad to brad and you're laying tape over each and every single line and testing your circuits on the front side, it's also important to test ones that would be wrong, just to make sure they do in fact show up wrong. So for this example, we've got a woe right here, but it's so close to some of these fruit that I'd want to make sure that in fact it's not going to show up as a positive answer when we connect it with fruit. So this is the almond milk, and you've got fruit here, and in fact it does not light up. So we're putting down tape in the exact right places and we should be good to continue. So one additional thing that I'd like to mention is that with a board this large, where you have your answers up top and so many choices, eventually as you start connecting the brads to the answer brads, they start creating circuits within themselves. So for example, where you have two fruits here, even though each one is connected to the answer brad, the reality is that you could also put the continuity tester on these two answers, which on the front are a pear and some tomatoes, and it would also light up because it really completes the circuit. So as you get down towards the bottom here, so that you're not having to go so far to get to these answers way up top, you can actually start connecting them to each other and creating shorter circuits between them, because it will still answer the question correctly when they put their continuity tester here and here, as even if they put it here and here. And that's just kind of one of the nuances. Kids typically don't figure that out, but just so that you know, you can make your job a little bit easier by just connecting the circuits lower down. The last thing you'll want to do before you close this up and tape it is you're going to want to separate all of your brads so they don't cross each other, and then tape everything down. So you can see up here, I've already taped these down so that they're not going to move. Additionally, I'll put these guys next to each other and I will tape this down because I don't want these to move and rotate and cross each other, and that would mess up the circuit and mess up the answers.